because the God explanation has no more justification than the other explanations. It's really as simple as that. The God explanation, let me say, in terms of how we come to belief, I look at it on a scale of 0 to 100. Okay, so do you believe X? Does God exist? As the obvious subject here. If it's a 0, you disbelieve it absolutely. If it's 100, if you are at 100, that you believe it absolutely. Now, to be intellectually honest, if you're going to be intellectually honest, you got to say that nobody gets to be at 0 or 100. So it really becomes a 1 to 99 scale. So first off, beware of anybody who says they're 100% sure. Okay, so 1% says means you're very strongly convinced that it's not likely, and then 99% means you're as high as you can possibly be as to likelihood. Now, let's say you're 90%. That means you are 90% sure it's true. Now, the difference up to that 100, the 10 that's up there, that's your level of doubt. All right. So belief, as I'm defining it here, is basically from 51 up. All right. And that does, so when we say belief, too many people kind of mean 100%, and that's actually an inaccurate thing. So a better way to think of it as belief is we can say that we believe something when we consider it more likely to be true than not true. So that's why I say you're 51. Or the converse of that, disbelieve, to be less likely to not be true than true, that then you're at 49 down to 1. Okay. So it could be God, but there's not a justification to move beyond the hypothesis. I will say I consider I'm a little different from some atheists, and maybe it's just my lack of education on some of it, because certainly people like Tom Jumpe and Arn Ra I consider more knowledgeable than me. But I do consider that there is to be some evidence for God. I don't think that there's really any true blind faith out there. There is some amount of evidence. I think the existence of the Bible is actually evidence. I think it's bad evidence. I think it's vastly insufficient to get us to that 51%. And even collectively, all the whatever else you want to define as evidence for God, I still see that as vastly insignificant. There's a lot of misinformation and miseducation. Oh, thank you, Otangelo, for coming up. I'm going to bring you up. Okay. Can you hear me, Otangelo?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Terrific. Yeah, I got you. I'm going to pull down your text there. We don't know. So did I interpret your question right? We don't know. It just can't be God. Was that the grammar that you had intended to use?
Well, that's something which I hear very often when I ask how to explain our existence without a creator. Then
Mm-hmm.
usually my opponent says, "Well, we don't really know how everything came to be." And then I
Mm-hmm.
ask, "Well, do you think that not knowing is a better explanation than, based on what we do know, say that God is the best explanation?" And
It is a valid and honest answer. So I'll put it to you that way. Now anybody who believes in God, have your own opinion, and that's fine. But when you look at the evidence, well, when you look at the minimal evidence that we do have, it just does not seem to be enough to make it likely to be true. It may be enough, though, frankly, because the theoretical physics about the origin universe, a physicist might disagree with me on this, but it may be that the God explanation has enough to make it more likely than the others. But I'm not sure that would really get us above, say, 5% on that scale, as opposed to these other ones, which are stuck at like 1 and 2 or whatever the very low likelihood is. So maybe there's an argument to be made there, but I don't see an argument to say that the God explanation is the likely one, or yeah, let's leave it at that.
Okay, so let me ask you. Let's
Yeah,
suppose that you play the state um, lottery. I think it's the Mega Ball or something like that
yeah.
in
There's
the
lots of
United
lotteries,
States.
so yeah, any
Yeah.
lottery, yeah,
Let
sure.
me suppose that you see someone winning the Powerball lottery 500 times in a row, and you would have two possible explanations. One would be that the guy just was lucky, and the second one would be that he probably cheated the game.
Yeah.
Which of the two alternatives do you think would be the more plausible explanation?
Well, I mean, the odds on winning a lottery are calculable, right? Because you know exactly the factors. So,
Yeah, let's say
plus,
that that each game would be one win in 300 million alternatives. Now
okay,
let's
yeah, depends.
suppose that
Depend.
you would,
No,
yeah,
let me answer.
let's
Let me
play with
answer.
this.
Wait,
Let's
wait. Let me
let's
answer your.
work with
Let me
this.
answer your question. Let me answer your question. So you're right. It's going to depend on the number of numbers and all that stuff. But yeah. So I mean, in your initial question, the answer would be it looks like he cheated.
Okay, so this is an analogous situation to the fine tuning of the universe. I wrote recently a book on this topic, which you can find on Amazon,
What's
and
the name of
I
your? What's the title of your book? You want to mention it?
it's the signature in the cosmos.
Okay.
So there I list 466 parameters, which is conservative compared to the number that Hugh Ross came up with, and the overall um, odds
Numbers of what?
parameters, fine tuning parameters, starting with the
Okay.
initial conditions of the universe, going to the expansion rate, fine tuning of atoms, fine tuning of stars, fine tuning of
Yeah.
galaxies, fine tuning of stars, the Earth, fine tuning of the moon,
Yeah.
excluding biochemistry fine tuning. So these are 18 categories that I list and
Okay.
466 parameters. And
Okay.
I include in the calculation the interdependencies, and I come up with an overall odd estimation
What was
of
that? What was
one
that word? Inter what? What was that word?
interdependencies. That,
Interdependencies. Okay.
yes. So I come up with an overall odds number. Of course, it is an estimation, but um, it gives a picture of 1 in 10 to 1,577.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. Well,
so
let me say the first part, my first reaction to that, and then we'll get more directly into what you're asking. Um, Neither you or Hugh Ross are physicists, so the number of parameters that you're citing is higher than is typically agreed to by physicists. However, um, and a lot of the numbers are, it's like you've got one number like the mass of the proton, another number like the mass of the electron, and then you've got like ratios. I mean, you could take any two numbers and make more from it by just mixing and matching them. However, you're right. There are quite a few. It's like 100, or I don't know the exact number. It's not hundreds and hundreds, but it's still enough to consider fine tuning a significant issue to talk about. So let's. Okay, I just want to put that in there. Continue, please.
well, the comparison or the analogous situation is to the lottery game, which I just asked you, and you said it's more plausible that someone cheated the game. So if you have, let's even put 100, the number of 100, as you just mentioned, of fine-tuning parameters, that must be
Sure.
just right. So um, why do you think is not a conscious being with foresight and intelligence the most plausible explanation for setting up these numbers or these parameters in order to have a life permitting universe?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. First off, I do think, and this is not from me. This comes from Sean Carroll, who is a proper physicist. that the fine tuning argument is probably the strongest argument for deity, not anything more than creator. So not God in any sort of other way, but a creator. Um, the we don't know. You start with the anthropomorphic principle, which is that it is possible that it could not have been any other way. If the parameters weren't just that, we would not exist. So there could be that this is the only way for universe to have come to being, however they came to being. So if that's the case, you don't have to have a creator. You doesn't say there isn't one, but it's a possibility that one didn't need to be there. We also don't know that if we're in a sort of a multiversal thing, where like black holes pop out universes or whatever the process is, that it couldn't have been. And this is basically one of the multiverse theories. There's like 4 levels of multiverse theory that the numbers of universes could have been like in almost infinite. And I think the number that they came up with is somewhere in 10 to the 500th power in terms of numbers of types of universes. I'm not a physicist, so I can't get into more detail than that. And if that's the case, there are going to be some that can sustain life the way we know it. It's also possible that other universes can hold life in other ways. You're right that many of them, the way we understand the concepts at the moment, would not stay. Right? They would immediately collapse, or they would matter couldn't hold together. Those types of things, which is why it's a good argument. I mean, it's a good thought. So to me, I look at it seems to be that it's a hint. When you're trying to figure out if something is true in the science world, you look at these little hints, and that's where you try to aim your research down that road. And then the big challenge becomes how do we devise a way to test this? And currently, you and I are working with logic here, essentially, which doesn't really get us anywhere, except to try to discover and dismiss false reasoning, right? Incorrect logic. But there's just too much we don't know to go to the God one as, again, most likely to be true. Certainly not to the above 51% level.
Well, the multiverse proposal, first of all, it is an untestable hypothesis. Secondly, it just puts the problem further back without solving it. In special, you would need a universe generator. You would
And
need to
that's
have a beginning as well, because according to the second law of thermodynamics, every closed system tends to go towards higher
yeah.
entropy to a state where you get to
Okay.
death of the
Okay.
universe.
There's a
So,
problem with that, Atangelo. There's a problem with that. The second law of thermodynamics applies within our universe. We do not know that it applies outside our universe or before or whatever else there might be. So that is a very common issue that people mistake that people make
okay, so
when they
let's put this on side. Okay,
when
so
they
let's
take
put
things like, go ahead.
okay, so let's put the second law on side. On top of that, you have a philosophical problem with time. As soon as you propose change and time, you need to have um, a way to get to this present moment in time. And if you have an infinite sequence back in the past, that means there is an infinite interval from any point in the past to arrive here. That means whenever you posit a future to arrive at this moment in time, there is still another and another and another section of time in front of
Yeah.
it. That means you will never reach that present moment in time.
Again
So,
and again, that also applies to our universe. We conceive of time as having started at the moment or the fraction of a second before the Big Bang. That's our time zero, right? So we don't even know the concept of time and cause and effect outside our universe. We don't know if anything happens, if our philosophy, if logic, if cause and effect, we don't know if any of that applies outside our universe. So I see what you're saying, because it sounds logical to say that. And I'm not saying that there wasn't a beginning. I'm saying we don't know that there was or wasn't outside our universe. You know, so but let's just say for a second that you're right. Let's go there. That that there had to be a beginning. Okay. Um, and you're saying a beginning to our universe or a beginning of the multiverse? Which one are you saying?
well, Vilenkin said that any proposal that you make, either our universe or a multiverse, requires a beginning.
Okay, let's just go there for a second. Okay, and I'll use multiverse because we'll go outside of our galaxy to play in that sandbox for a bit. Um, so if whatever the multiverse is originated at some point, you're saying it had to have, well, I was going to say you're going to say it had to have a cause, but then we don't even know if cause is a thing. Um, and then you're proposing that the cause was an infinite creator. Is that correct?
Well, yes, there has to be something which was not created because nothing has no
Okay.
causal um, capabilities because nothing is the absence of anything. And of course, nothing cannot do something. So something must have always existed. Then the
Okay. I'm
question
gonna
is
put.
if
I'm
the
gonna put.
multiverse had the beginning, what was the cause of that
Yeah.
multiverse?
I'm gonna put the quantum physics, quantum mechanics concept aside for a second. Um, so let's even if I allow for the concept, trying to stay on the philosophy of the logic here now, of there being an eternal first cause, right? Is the phrase you use. Um, I see no reason, other than it being one of the possibilities, that first cause has to be sentient or anything more than a quote unquote natural in its realm process. So that gets us to you can get us, I think, with that logic to an eternal. I guess we'll stay with the word creator, but it doesn't get us to a being, let alone a sentient being, let alone an intentionally acting being. Even if we stick with that logic.
Well, the thing is that why should there be a change from um, a timeless, non physical realm to a beginning of one where there is time, space, and matter and
We
energy?
we don't
And
know because we don't know of what that realm is. We know nothing about that. We're doing our best here to try to apply knowledge and logic of within our universe, and at a naive level, because we are, humans have not been around for that long. Not naive in terms of what we know, like compared to like what we might know 5,000 years ago if we're still around. We're doing the best we can. So I I don't want to say it's a paradox, because it's not really a contradiction. It's a place and time in quotes, because before zero time in our universe, we don't know what that is. Um, you're making assumptions about what is there, and we know nothing about that. So I'm trying to at least follow the logic with you to the best we can, but I still see jumps that are applying what we know about the current universe into a realm that's outside of our universe. That is one of the major problems I have here, and I know it's it is challenging because we all want to know, right? We all like answers to these big questions. Where do we come from and why are we here, kind of thing. And it's uncomfortable to not have the answers. But humanity at all times in history has been at points of ignorance on whatever subject, and this is where we are now in the 21st century.
Well,
We
that's
know a
where
lot.
you are. That's where you are, Phil. Because I am not at your position, and I disagree strongly with your attempt of justification to say we don't know, because we don't have only philosophy and science, but we have also theology and direct revelation. And you have
Well,
just to put that on side in order to make the claim that it is justified to say we don't
what
know. We have a history of direct revelation in the Bible for millennia.
what is theology?
Knowledge of
Define,
God.
just define. No, I'll be more specific. Define theology for me.
It is about God, about um, a deity. What a deity is.
Okay, so you're not defining it as scripture, or you're just using it as a broader term.
Theology can apply to any religion. Different religions have different theological concepts about their deities. Hinduism has a different concept than Christianity, which has a different
Okay,
concept than Muslims and Islam. So
so
it
so when you
doesn't
use
apply to just one specific religion.
so when you use the word theology, you're referring to all human knowledge about God. Is that correct?
Beliefs, yes. It's not
Okay.
knowledge.
Oh, okay. That's a very good distinction. Thank you. So beliefs. Well, if it's okay, because that's interesting. Because there's a difference, of course, between knowledge, which we can't know for an absolute, and the beliefs. And the beliefs have to have justification, and the justification has to be valid and sufficient, right? So we can look at the theology is such it's odd to think of theology as the collective beliefs, because the beliefs are so diverse. Um, it okay. Let me just say it. It really just seems that the beliefs, doesn't matter which religion you take it from, but we can certainly work on any specific one. Um,
Well,
seem
I'm
to
a
go
Christian. Well, I'm a Christian, so yeah.
okay. So let's just call Christian theology. Then we'll just use that phrase. I don't know. It seems to me that, let me say, when I read the Bible, it seemed very evidently to be, and this is my opinion, so this, don't take this as knowledge, just take it as an opinion. It seemed to be a book written by believers in that particular age. Um, not a book of revelation. How do you justify a belief in revelation when, yeah, let's just go with that. In a particular passage, how do you convince yourself, or what convinces you that a particular passage is divinely inspired versus just written by a person who believed in God?
Well, Phil, I came to believe by pain and not by reason. Okay, so
Okay, tell me
the
about that.
reason that I started to seek God was because I had an existential crisis. I was in depression, and I was asking fundamental questions about our existence. And so I said, well, let me seek God and see if that solves my situation. And that was the point that I started to read the Bible, to have questions. And then I met someone that invited me to go to an evangelical church. I went there, and there they answered my questions. And I said, yes, I want to have salvation, I want to believe in Christ. I believe that He is the one He is revealed to be in the Bible. That was my starting point. Okay. So, of course, when I was 18, I didn't have the education and knowledge that I have 40
Sure.
years later. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I saw so many YouTube atheists, like in special the Godless Engineer, claiming that Jesus is fiction, that he never existed, that he's just a myth. And
Hmm.
I said, well, let me investigate that. And the product of my investigation was a 2 volume book with 900 pages, and one that I dedicated 200 pages was in regards of the Shroud of Turin, which is the supposed burial cloth of Jesus. And
Well, we know that that's not real now. We know that
yeah,
that's
yeah,
from
no, we don't know that.
14th
Well, yes,
14th
no, we
century or
don't know.
so.
Well, yeah, we don't know that. That's precisely the point. The claim that the radiocarbon C14 dating is true, that has been disproven by 4 or 5 scientific papers more recently published, which put strongly in question this issue. But the thing is that there are people. David Rolfe is a guy who has made a movie on the shroud, and he has put the price of $1 million
Okay.
out there for anyone that can demonstrate how the image on the shroud could be reproduced.
Can I ask you a question about that? I don't want to get on too much of a tangent here. What what why do you why do you think that you and several others, however many others there are, um, who have an opinion that's different than scholarly consensus, why do you think that that is more likely to be correct than scholarly census on the
Well,
shroud?
the scholarly consensus is that there have been over 100 different scientific disciplines which have scrutinized the shroud. There has been a STURP team, Shroud of Turin investigation 1978 by 33 scientists, and the result was that it is not a forgery. So there has been just one test of a radiocarbon test against 25 scientists, which did not find any indication that this was a fabrication from a middle-aged forger. And this is
Okay.
simply
Okay.
being ignored by the majority of those which simply
Okay.
stick to the narrative of the unique
So,
scientific test.
okay. So I'll give you this point. So let's say that I have not done research in this field to know have read the consensus other than the one that I've heard that. So um, I think you're incorrect, but let's just say you're right. Okay, that you and these others are correct in the
Well,
shroud of.
if one science paper says that through the radiocarbon test that is from 1260 to 1390, and you have 25 science papers that were published before by 33
Okay.
specialists and scientists which have made all kind of tests, and after then hundreds of different disciplines have also
Okay.
investigated the artifact, and they all have no explanation whatsoever how this
Okay.
artifact could have been forged.
Okay. Here's the thing.
How does that permit
I'm gonna give you the point.
your
Tangelo,
conclusion
I'm
that
gonna give you.
the consensus is that it is a forgery, please?
Okay, Tangelo, I'm gonna give you the point. Okay, did you hear me when I said that?
Yes. Okay.
So because I don't think this can be resolved between us. Obviously, you have a strong opinion on this, and you're more knowledgeable than I am. But I don't think this could be resolved between you and I on YouTube or Facebook. I think we would have to have experts in the room who know the subject as well as you do. So I'm curious to go to give you the point and see where it takes us. So let's say the Shroud of Turin is um, not accurate, legitimate, okay, as to the time of Christ. Personally, I mean, I've read a couple of Richard Carrier's books, but I'm not a mythicist. I believe because it is frankly not an odd thing to believe that a human Jesus existed. That's not difficult. It's not an unusual claim. We know that they were preachers in that period of time, so we can say that Jesus existed without stretching ourselves at all. And let's put the Shroud of Turin aside, or I'll just give it to you to say, at least for this conversation, that it was legitimate and there was an image, and that's evidence of Christ's existence. So now what do we do? So the question, to me, then the next thing we do is we look at the question of divinity, right? Because we know the guy existed. If we know the guy existed and he preached and the Romans crucified him, that all makes simple sense because they did that sort of thing to different people. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with stories of supernatural events and concepts of divinity.
Well,
So where did you want to go next? Go ahead.
the thing is, Phil, that the image on the shroud is on a layer of 0.2 microns. It is not a stain, it's not a pigment, it's not painting, it is not a chemical process, and nobody really knows what could have made that image.
Okay, so
And
what does that convince you of then?
that it was a miraculously made image at the moment of the resurrection.
Okay, I will just say on this that that's not enough for me. It's enough for you. Okay, it's not enough for me.
Okay,
You know, it's a
what
if
would be enough for you?
for a Shroud of Turin kind of thing, I'd say something that's as accurate as a present day photo, something that's not fuzzy and whatever. So you know,
Now,
on that
I would
one,
say, in a general sense, what would you expect to see? What kind of signature would you kind of expect to see in order to say, okay, this is evidence that is sufficient for me to believe that God exists?
okay, for God, not Jesus, just God in general.
Let's start just with the Creator, with an
Okay.
intelligent, conscious, powerful Creator.
Okay, that's a good question. I don't think I mean, I've heard a lot of people ask this question, but not that specifically. So, an intelligent creator at the beginning of the universe, given that we have all these other options, um, I can't, I'm not aware of one other than like some, literally some sign writing in the sky kind of thing that says I did this, or toward like to see some message in the cosmic microwave background possibly, which is the earliest thing we can see in the universe. um Something like that. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, what I see is very often, Phil, is um, that many people they have not formulated a solid epistemological framework to investigate origins. And then they come up with silly demands like, I'm sorry to classify it like that, but I think this is a silly demand because God will certainly not attend to this kind of um, a request. And
No,
someone
that's
said
fair.
once,
That's fair. But
okay, so someone said once, let me add to this.
why would he or why wouldn't he? How do you know he would or wouldn't?
Yeah, I see it like this. God has given enough light to those that want to believe to find Him, and He has given enough darkness to those that want to live autonomously to Him to
Yeah.
be able to experience that autonomous life independently from someone above them.
Does it?
That's why I
Does it?
believe that he gives sufficient
Okay.
light, but no, he doesn't prove himself the way that you just said that it would
Okay.
convince you, because that would be absolutely horrible for those that want to live autonomously to him,
What do you mean by autonomously?
without believing in God and without
Okay.
trusting in Him and without
Well,
considering His existence.
you do understand that it's not that we don't want to. It's that there's a difference between not wanting to and just
Well,
not being
maybe
convinced of
you.
the
Well,
evidence,
maybe
right?
you. I mean, you can talk about yourself, but I
Yeah.
am speaking in a general sense because I know of a lot of people who just hate the idea a God or someone above God to exist. So that's why I
Well,
think that God
I
gives
mean,
them the opportunity to live as they want, independently and believing that He does not exist.
everybody that I've run into who says they don't want to follow God or believe in God, or basically that they wouldn't worship this particular Christian God particularly, is because of what's written in the Bible into the character of how God acts. Not that they wouldn't want to believe in a creator. So I think you're overstating that point. I get your point though. I do get your point. So I'm puzzled by the idea, the fact that with almost without exception in history, every culture has come up with creation stories and deities and other similar types of words for it. Doesn't that seem odd to you that humans would come up with so many creation stories, but only one, and your particular one, is correct? How do you deal with
Well,
that?
for example, in regards of the global flood, we have 140 different flood accounts all around the world by all kind of different um, tribes,
Okay,
and,
but
uh,
that's
and
140
and
is trivial compared to 30,000 different religions throughout history.
yeah,
It's
to
probably, I
address
think it's
that,
more than
I
that.
think that people have an innate necessity to find some meaning and making sense of our existence. So
That's a very good point, because then if that's the case, then that's a bias. And
absolutely,
I think that's a very
absolutely.
strong, I think that's a very strong bias. I think that, and I'll go beyond that, because I think that the questions like that of uh, particularly the why are we here kind of a thing, is something that we find in probably the earliest philosophy. Would you agree with that? I haven't studied deep philosophy, but it seems to have been always been around. So it is not only a question that we kind of have, but that has been asked and essentially been. I find it to be reinforced throughout history that we ask this why question, and it's not until very recently that we're starting to notice that there's a problem with this question. When you ask, why am I here, or why is the universe here? That's like a second level question. You first have to ask the question, is there a reason? And then and investigate that, because that answer could be yes or it could be no. If you can
Well, the thing
determine that
is,
it's yes, then you can go on to ask the, well, what is that why?
well,
What is the
first of all,
reason?
in essence, it is a philosophical question.
Yes, and that's
Secondly,
fine.
secondly, if there is no creator, and if you are the product just of unguided events without a conscious, eternal, powerful, intentional creator on the bottom
Hmm.
of existence, then essentially we are just a byproduct of this universe. We
Yes,
came from death.
yes,
Suddenly we became alive for whatever
by
accident
whatever process.
that
Yeah,
happened, and then when we die, we will be stardust again. And what
yes,
we did during that time period is completely irrelevant because the universe doesn't have any memory if we lived as a jerk or as a saint, right? So,
yes,
in a
yes.
naturalistic framework or um, worldview, that would be a settled issue. Our existence
And
has
that's
no intrinsic value or meaning, but we would basically just invent it. Now, if a creator made
you
it,
got that very well. That's very well stated. Yes, yes,
so
yes on all that.
so so now in contrary, if there is a conscious, eternal, powerful creator with foresight who created this universe and made humans, then he had some reason and intention why he would do that. And of course, we could only know these reasons if he would self reveal himself to us and say, it's for this and that reason.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
gonna hold on. Don't lose that, because I want to. I want you to state that again in a second. Does it bother you that all that holistic concepts you just gave, which I think you're entirely right, of there being no inherent reason and purpose, does that really bother you? Or yeah,
Well,
let's start with that.
the thing is that when I was in depression and I had an existential crisis, yes, it bothered me. And I
Yeah.
wanted to find answers because that's how we are made. That's our nature. It is not something that just bothers me, but
Can
I
can you
think, yeah.
can you clarify when you say existential crisis? This is an honest question. Does that mean that you are wanting to find a reason, or what do you how do you define as an existential
Well,
crisis?
I wanted to come. Well, in the first thing, I wanted to find out of my depression, and I
Yeah,
didn't know why I had a depression. Okay,
yeah.
and when I started to seek God and say maybe God is the answer and can heal my depression, I started to pray and to read the Bible, and somehow I don't know, maybe it wasn't even God. I cannot answer that. But anyway, after many different
That's fair.
attempts to find a solution, and I didn't find one. At least this move um, helped me to get out of this depression, and it started a chain of seeking answers, also in regards of where we come from, where we go, why are we here, just is there a God,
Did you
isn't
get
there a
any
God?
did you get any treatment for the depression,
No,
medically
because I
or
didn't know at that point that there was actually clinical
treat, treatments for it?
treatment.
Yeah.
I didn't
Okay.
even know
Fair enough.
exactly what I had. That's the truth. And
Well, it's not an unusual story. A lot of people, uh, a lot of people, anecdotally, and this is my own experience for talking with a lot of people. Yeah, I've met people exactly in your situation who have said that coming into a God belief has they say cured them. We'll take it to the extreme. And similar, I've found met people that have said the same thing about drug abuse, which is excuse me, which is interesting and somewhat hopeful for them. So go on.
and that was actually also one of um, fears that I had because I grew up in Zurich, in Switzerland.
Hmm.
In the 80s, there was a park which I had to go nearby to go to work, and it was called the Needle Park because it was the greatest agglomeration and concentration of heroin addicts,
Mm,
and they were using drugs openly.
yeah.
And passing there and seeing also colleagues of school ending up at this place and becoming addicts was something that created fear in me that I could eventually also go on
Because
this road.
you didn't want to be there. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I didn't want to go in
Yeah.
that
You don't
direction.
want to end up there. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So um, that was something that was concerning me as well. But to coming back to what I was saying previously, of course, I don't think that telling that to an atheist that this is a good argument for theism or for the Christian God, because I mean you can easily
T-
say maybe it is just something that helped you, but it wasn't really a God acting in your life and changing your or healing your depression. I understand that this is easy refuted by such an objection. Okay, so
well, it
yeah,
just doesn't refute it. It just it is evidence that convinced you, and I
right,
count that as evidence. But it doesn't refute the, God's existing or not existing. It's not that strong.
right.
And
So
of course, we're all glad that it worked for you.
yeah.
So because
So,
you want
so
to be healthy.
basically,
So
what happened since I converted, I always seeked conversations with non-believers, and my focus was always on evangelism and telling others about my faith. And I learned very early that we cannot. It is not about trying to convince other people. It's just about confess what we believe and permit others to make up their mind, whatever it is. So, I never. Um, my motivation is never by trying to impose what I believe to
Well,
others.
that's very fair. I got to say that is very fair. And that will take me to. I have no problem with that, Tangelo. That is very fair. I mean, because you have this strong belief, and you've seen it help you, which let's just say that gives you sufficient reason to think it could help people under a similar condition. Um, I have a problem when those who believe religions try to uh, I'm not sure if impose is too strong a word here, but try to change society in that direction because I see too much harm and discrimination coming from religion. So I'd have little problem with religion, just like I have no problem with astrology that I don't believe does anything. But because if there's no harm involved, but once you've got number one factual inaccuracies like the age of the earth and uh, religion becoming motivation for wars and strife and things, or LGBT discrimination, then I have a big problem. So what the story you've given so far, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So what? Um, so is there no problem here?
Well,
You know.
the thing is, Phil, that if you ask me what is the meaning of life, then I
Hmm.
come back to what Jesus said when they asked him, what is the foremost and most important command? What did he answer? He said, the first command is love God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all
Hmm.
your personhood, and secondly, love your next as yourself. And I think this is the key to the meaning of life. Being loved by God, love God, and love your next. That is
Okay.
my answer. And I think if Christians would live the first and the second command, we would have a better society.
I agree with you on that. The fact is that there are people of different religions that don't even believe in God, right? Or at least not the God that you're speaking of. And there are clearly people like me who don't believe in anything supernatural. So we exist here too. I mean, when you say that the most important thing is to love God, first, and we get into what should we teach, say everybody in school or something, which in terms of what is factually true, then we have to get into the proof of God questions. And that's not a problem until it's uh, forced on others. I do have a bit of a concern in terms of teaching false things like like the earth is 6,000 years old or whatever, you know.
Well, let me tell you, I believe that the Earth is
Uh,
7,500 years old, and I can
yeah.
defend that plausibly and rationally, even if you don't know what my arguments are. But I have no problem to confess that, and I'm a young Earth creationist. Okay.
Okay. Hold on. Give me 1 second. I want to scoot over and just see if there's a. We got some chat going on. To see if there's a chat that we might want to share. Okay. Here, let's try this one. Angelo, you're arguing. Sorry. You're arguing for the Christian God's existence, yet you have to pretend to understand a dozen things no one can understand, rule out another dozen things no one can rule out. Um, what do you think? How do you respond to that?
Well,
It's a very broad statement.
I
So
mean, my experience with God in 40 years is something that gives me 100% certainty that the Christian God exists and that He is the true God. Now, I cannot prove that to anyone else because this has to do with personal experiences. So the
okay, wait
only
a
thing
second.
I
Wait a
can do
second.
is
I got to stop you. Don't lose your thought. because you just triggered me on that 100%, and I explained why earlier. How can you say 100% as opposed to 99% if you have that scale available to you? Because 100% means with that's an absolute statement, right? You'd have to know everything about the universe and everything about an all-powerful deity to be absolutely true. Then you're only a mortal person with limited knowledge. So how can you be at 100%? I
Okay, if
can't
I
see the
say
justification for
99,
that.
okay, if I say 99.9%, would you be
Yeah,
happy?
yeah, I will, because I
Okay.
think that's. I mean, again, I gave a 1 to 99 scale, so I've just
Okay,
given an integer. So you'll say 99, and that's fine.
what I
I just
want
want
to
I just
convey,
want the intellectual honesty, and I
okay,
appreciate
what I
that very
want to
much.
convey is that there
Yeah.
is no doubt in me that the Christian
Okay.
God is the true God.
Okay.
Now,
You
if
are.
you're talking about 100% or
Well, no.
99.9%, for me it doesn't matter. I think the important thing
Okay.
is to convey that I have no doubt.
Okay. Well, you can't have no doubt because again, you are not eternally knowledgeable. So you have minimal doubt.
Okay,
Okay. So
okay,
that's
let's
that's
stick to
intellectually
that.
fair. That's
Okay,
intellectually
no,
fair.
no,
Okay.
that's
Just
fine.
like I cannot be absolutely convinced that there is no God. So I just want to get some intellectual honesty because that makes a big difference in me knowing if I'm talking to someone who can go there, and I appreciate that.
Okay, okay.
Okay, go on,
I
go
don't
on.
know if you responded to the chat question,
Um,
but it has a lot to do with my personal experience. So I rule out any other God except the biblical God, and in special
okay,
Jesus Christ. So
how do you so personal experience? And you said a couple minutes ago though that personal experience wasn't enough to be convincing. Didn't necessarily have to be enough to be convincing to others, but it certainly can be enough to convince you. Why am I misunderstanding you now, or are you now asserting
no,
that
I'm not
that
contradicting myself. What I am saying is that maybe personal experiences, that's probably what you want to refer to. Maybe it isn't the best argument to bring and
okay?
tell it to someone that is an unbeliever. Okay.
So personal experience works for you, and lots of other people, obviously, with different experiences. But so okay, I guess we don't have a problem then on that one.
Yeah, I don't think so. I only think that maybe, I mean, it can be that you will be convinced if I tell you my life story or someone else. I mean, there are people that have had extraordinary life stories, and when they tell that to others, then it is sufficient to convince other people that the
Yeah.
biblical God is true. Okay. So I cannot rule
Um,
that out either. But in my approach, usually I use a method to have a conversation with atheists, which is the traditional or maybe the cumulative argument for God's existence, which starts: is there a
okay.
God? Isn't there a God? What is the more likely proposition? And once that is cleared up, then someone can go to the more specific questions about who is that creator.
Okay. Um, Give me a second because I'm looking. I think with the software that I've got, I'm limited to that code that I gave you that you came in on. It doesn't look like I can generate more than one, which I'd like to be able to, but I'd have to do it by email. So let me ask the people in the chat real quick. Does anybody else want to come over? In which case we'll switch out. And if not, then Otangelo, you and I can continue. But I don't want to take up all the time with one person if there's a lot other people because there's a lot of questions coming by.
Well, if you want, I
So,
can leave and you can invite others to join you, no
well,
problem.
it's just because you've been here a while. I don't want you to leave if there's because I think we're communicating really well here. So I'm kind of enjoying this. Um, I don't. Again, I wish I had the ability to invite more than one. Um, so yeah, people in the chat. If let me know if you want to come up. And if you don't, and Otangelo and I are going to keep going here. And Otangelo, you're more than welcome to come on a different show. I mean, a different night and time. And like I say, I'm on TikTok also. So let me just make sure that link goes up. Okay, so let's continue for a bit. Oh, let me bring up some of the questions, the other comments, Otangelo. That one was really broad, so let's see if I can get one a little more specific. Okay, this one's a little different, but okay, let's try this one. How did you determine it was God and not Satan? Corinthians 11:14. For even Satan disguises himself as the angel of light. How is this one for you, for in your experience?
Well, I believe that the Holy Spirit directs me and shows me, gives me spiritual discernment so that I can classify if what someone says comes from the evil one or from God.
I'm being a little devil's advocate, which is probably not the best term to use, but wouldn't I don't know that much about how Satan is described in the Bible, but wouldn't Satan potentially have the ability to be just as convincing?
Well, the Bible says that he will not be able to lie to those which are elected by God. So he
Which
doesn't
are
have
which are
sufficient
what
power.
what by God? What
That
was
are
the word?
elected by God, that are
Elected by God.
chosen by God. So he will not
Well,
overcome the plans of God. God has a plan,
so how do
and
we know? How do we know who's been elected versus who is just a true believer?
I think that is something that only God knows.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. Let's see. I hope you don't mind doing this. I want to involve the audience a little bit. So, um, 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 something about a vaccine. We're not even going to touch that because that's a whole different subject. The conversation is just going on between other people, so we don't necessarily, definitely don't have to bring up everything here. Okay, let's try this one. This was kind of from a conversation, but do you see a difference between spiritual and wait, what do you mean by, excuse me, spiritual as in spiritual growth? What does spiritual mean to you, Otangelo?
Uh, that's a difficult question.
It is, yeah, I think I agree. That's
I
why
think
I'm
it
curious.
has to do with godly life. Um, the experiences that you make on a spiritual level with God. God communicating with you, you praying, communicating with God, you experiencing answers of prayers, you experiencing things that you know there is clear godly intervention. Yeah, on this
So,
level.
could somebody be spiritual through belief in a different deity? Because would seem to exclude that possibility with your answer.
I mean, it would depend about the definition of spiritual. What is meant by that?
Well, that's I agree, and I think spiritual is one of those words that is so fuzzy that we can't really
Right,
look to the definition except perhaps
right.
as a starting point. That's why I asked specifically what does it mean to you, and then
Yeah.
we use your definition. Because and that's so that's what puzzled me about your answer is that did you say God or Christian God? I forget now, or you probably meant Christian God. Well,
Well,
okay,
since I am a Christian, I'm talking about
okay.
Christian spirituality.
So then my question stands: can somebody be spiritual without believing in the Christian God?
Yeah. To be honest, I've never thought about this question, so it's
Yeah,
difficult to answer.
yeah. Um, I'm gonna say yes. in terms in terms of I'm kind of going off the cuff here now, so this is not a objective answer. That I'm going to say yes, but again, it depends on how they define spiritual. I'm not a big fan of the spiritual concept. I think it's sort of a looking for something that's actually not there. Uh, so, do you see a difference between? I guess you don't see. You're not implying a difference between spiritual and religious. From, am I getting that right, or no?
Well, the word religion, it comes from the Latin religare, or reconnecting, or basically saying it is a venture to reconnect with God. And how do you do that? You do it on a spiritual level. You do it by when you talk to God. You don't see God, you don't experience physically God, but you just believe that He is listening, that He is interacting, that He responds. So all these things occur on a spiritual level.
So when somebody says, if somebody says that they believe that they don't believe in God, but they believe in a higher power, and that to them is spiritual, are we thinking that that's correct, but they just don't know God, so they define it with different words?
Yeah, as I said, it depends very much about what meaning you give to the word spiritual.
Yeah, that's interesting. I, it seems like it's interesting that you say you haven't been asked that before. I'm kind of surprised because you do a lot of interacting, but I think a lot of people would disagree with that. But you can have that conversation with them. So I just thought was
Hmm.
an interesting question to take. Yeah, and this is exactly what we were both saying. Spiritual is so vague; it means different things to different people. I agree, and it's again one of those things that um, the dictionary only goes so far, right? Because dictionaries are usage, and the meanings can get changed over time by the editors. So on words like spiritual that are so vague, we really have to ask our interlocutor what their definition and work within that conversation. And maybe the two of them, if they have
Let me
different,
ask you
if
here
they have,
the artificial intelligence. Okay, they say the word spiritual has a range of meanings and interpretations, often varying based on personal beliefs, cultural contexts, and philosophical perspectives.
yeah,
Generally, it refers to aspects of human experience and experience that go beyond the physical or material realm. Here are some common understandings of the term: connection to the non-physical, transcendence, religious association, metaphysical beliefs, holistic well-being, ethical and moral dimension, interconnectedness, and contemplative practices.
that's interesting because what I'm catching there is the word supernatural. So to be for spiritual, there has to be an element beyond the physical. It sounds like, and I would
Yes,
agree with that. I
that
would
would
agree
be
with
a good
that.
definition. Yes.
I would agree with that. I don't agree that a supernatural necessarily exists. So that's the similarly that I'm an atheist in the God sense. I sort of I'm an atheist in the spiritual sense. I don't see the justification for assuming that supernatural exists. Again, we can't know that it doesn't, but it could be that it exists and we have no access to it, and it could be that it does not exist. So
Okay, so it's half past midnight where I am. I am
okay,
in
okay,
Brazil, so it's quite late here.
all
But
right. Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed this.
yeah, sure, I enjoyed it too.
Yeah.
I'll subscribe your channel, and when you're online,
Okay.
I'll
Thank you.
join and we can continue this. Okay.
Let's talk again. Sure. Take
Have
care,
a good one.
Artangelo.
Bye bye.
You too. Bye bye. Um, that was interesting. That was interesting. I know Artangelo is. I've seen him all over the place with all sorts of interactions. And I want to say credit to him for having a good conversation. And I know it's difficult for not for him per se, but it's difficult at times when. Sorry about the clipping over there. It's difficult at times when some atheists get very abusive, or whatever, strong, or whatever the word you want to call. It's not my style. I don't like to see that, because it's one thing if we're talking about the age of the earth, because yeah, I'm going to give you a hard time on that, because we know that's not true. But we also need to learn, I think, to have conversations together. And when we disagree, when I'm talking to somebody on the street, it's different than online, right? Because here you've got anonymity in a sense, and distance, right? You can't click the screen, or Moment or whoever. But you know, doing it in person is interesting, because you want to keep it friendly. I love these conversations where we really challenge each other, and then most of the time we continue to disagree by the end of the conversation, but we leave friendly. We shake hands, and that was interesting. Let's talk again. I think we need more of that in politics and religion. Okay. Quick reminder, everybody who's out there, let's put this up. Like and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 500 here as soon as possible. Let me go back to the comments and see if I'm going to put this link out again. I'll just keep doing this. If anybody else wants to come in, put this link in. It looks like it works just fine. Atangelo proved us that. Oh, Douglas Thornstone just left, and he was in here for quite a bit of time. Thank you, Douglas, if you watch this back and see that. So thank you. I don't know how many people are watching. Again, it's my first one. I haven't figured out on the software where it says that yet. So there may not be much. This is the first time out, and I'm happy to have had that conversation. Let's see if I can find one more here to pull up as a question that or a comment that's made that I have something to say on. Let's pull this one. God is my vaccine 81. Ooh, that triggers me as a pharmacist. Please get your shots and your flu shots, everybody. I know we're up to date over here. We just turned 65, my wife and I, and we're retired for the first time, of course. And, we got our flu shots and our shingles vaccine. You don't want to be sidetracked. Shingles is especially, well, they're all important. Shingles is important because you can lose your eyesight if it hits you near your eyes. Okay. We have to keep the faith in just, oh, I guess you just, a typo. We have to keep the faith and just trust in God. Very common sentiment. I disagree. I don't think that faith is justification for coming to a belief. I'm going to read into this a little bit, since you're not here to comment on it. If you're still around and want to come up, please do. But when things go wrong, when bad things happen to good people, when life gets difficult, you can. I don't see. Well, it seems to me that the reason people go to God in those times is because they don't have anything else to do, or at least they don't know of anything else to do. Right? They don't know of another possible resolution or road to resolution for their problems. That doesn't mean there isn't one. It's we all each only know so much. I maybe it helps your mood to trust in God, but to me it seems like it's a last ditch effort. If there's nothing else left, you just to have some sort of I hate to use the word faith, because it's by definition it means not sufficient justification. So I use the word hope, okay, Because when we use faith, we go from a little bit of evidence of something, and then we don't have sufficient evidence to go over to this conclusion that we like. Here I have this disease over here, and here's me with having the disease cured. Faith doesn't get us over here. We can pretend that we're going to get over here, and maybe that'll make us feel better. I substitute in that type of situation the word hope. I hope to get over here, because hope doesn't jump us over there. It just expresses our desire to want to be over there. Okay. And it's also when things don't work out, you pray and you pray and it doesn't work out. Isn't that depressing? After you've just prayed to your the deity that you really trust and adore, and nothing good came of it, and then you have to fall back on well, God knows my plan and God works in mysterious ways. It's just I couldn't live with that. My brain cannot do that intellectually. I cannot drop that. I know would be rationalizing over there and making excuses. So that's why I'll use the word hope to look to that horizon of a better future. Trusting in God, to a degree, it's also, I think it slows us down from working harder to looking for answers, or alternative methods, whether it be meditation or seeing a doctor or giving us motivation to go back to school, other ways to solve our problems, asking other people for their advice, going online, looking for all these other ways, as opposed to just pray kind of stuff. So yeah, that's why I don't use faith in it that way. All right, looks like we're down to one person, so I think I'll just wrap this up as a first run. I think this was a good one, so let's just take the win. Okay. So whoever's up there, the one person, please subscribe. You're on YouTube. I see you're on YouTube, actually. So please subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys next time. Watch the channel anyways, besides the live that's going to go up there, and maybe I'll pull some pieces out of this into smaller, especially shorts. There will be other content here from the TikTok, longer and shorter, so you'll see this channel grow routinely in content. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the person who's left. Thanks for everybody who's watching in the future. This on replay. Be kind to each other, please. And I'll see you next time.